Hello and welcome to Exploring Computer Science. Today we're going to talk about assignment 4.4, the dice game. The dice game can be almost anything you choose it to be. There's a couple of things that you have to watch for in the rubric. Each die should have 4 or more faces. A normal die has 6. It should change costume based on a random number. We'll show you how to do that. I want you to use broadcasting to have a dice roll when a button is clicked. And specifically, I want you to use broadcast message and wait. And we will show you why that happens in a bit. You need to use variables to keep track of the total score for the game. And you also have to use conditional operators to calculate a score or produce an action. Different, more than just adding points. I'll show you how to add points. It's up to you to use these conditional operators to calculate a score. Different than just adding the points. Say if you get doubles, you get to go again, or something like that. So there is an enhancement associated with this assignment. You can make a 2-player game where players take turns. You could create a multi-level game where each level has its own rules, or you can use a timer that stops or changes the game when time's run out. Each of these 3 is about the same complexity. I would choose based on what you're more interested in doing. And today mostly we're going to be talking about up to but not including the enhancement. I'll save those for separate videos. So for starters, we need to create a dice. I'm going to go to a brand new clean project. I'm going to name this project, we'll just call it Dice Tutorial. And I'm not going to share it yet. I don't need a cat from this example, so I'm going to go ahead and delete the cat. I do need some die costumes, a die sprite and die costumes. You could draw your own, or you can borrow some from mine. There's a link in Canvas to this particular program. I'm going to go see inside this one right now. And I'm going to use a feature called the backpack, which is very handy for using sprites that were developed in a different program. And I'm giving you permission to do that for these, but I will warn you that by copying and pasting stuff this way, you have to know how it works, or you're not going to be able to use it very effectively. So I'm going to grab Dice 1, and I'm going to drag it down to my backpack, which is this bar down here. Now you can see Dice 1 is sitting right there. I can close the backpack, it disappears. Now I go back to my other program, that sprite that we just created, Dice 1. I'm going to now drag that into my project. I actually don't want any of the code associated with this yet. We'll talk about that later. I just needed those costumes. So those are my 6 costumes. Notice that the costumes are ordered in the expected order. The costume with 1 is in the first position, 2 is in the second position, 3 is in the third position, and so on. That's important for being able to tell what the die value is based on its costume number. We'll use that in our code. Let's do that. Let's make an event handler for when this sprite is clicked. Right there. And we want to pick a costume. So I've pulled out the switch costume block. Let's make this big so it's easy to read here. You can see we've got the 6 costumes to choose. We want this to happen randomly though, so we're going to introduce the random operator. Some of you have used it, but most of you have not. Random operator comes back, it fits in there on top of the costume, and we can pick random numbers, integers, between any 2 ranges. In this case, because we have 6 costumes to choose from, we can pick random 1 to 6. You could just as easily have an 8-sided, a 10-sided, a 16-sided die. Just have to create that many costumes. So When the sprite is clicked, it should pick random 1 to 6. Let's try it. I click it, it's a 3. I click it again, it's a 6. I click again, it's 2, 5, 6, 1. You can see we're going through all of the numbers somewhat randomly, and our code is working. That's as hard as it is to get a sprite to pick a random number. Now, the next part of the rubric, I'm going to jump back there, says we have to use broadcasting to have the dice rolled when a button is clicked. So we're going to jump over here. We're going to add a button, just a new sprite, and I think if I type the word button right there, it will show me some buttons. Here's a nice button. I like this one. It has a couple of costumes. I use it a lot. We'll put it down here. Button. On its code, I need to tell the dice to roll and then maybe do some other things. So we'll just do another event handler for when this sprite is clicked. We need to broadcast a message. Roll dice. That message doesn't exist, so we're going to type a new one. Roll dice. Sweet, there it goes. Broadcast roll dice. Now when I click the button, the dice should roll. No, it shouldn't. Now I need to go to the button and get a when I receive handler for roll dice. When I receive roll dice. Then I need to do exactly what I did up above. Let's duplicate that, put it right there. And now if I click the button, the dice rolls. There's a little trick you can do to animate this. I'm going to show you that very quickly here. I'm going to add a control loop. I'm going to repeat a random number of times. Oh, let's say somewhere between 4 and 6. I'm going to switch costumes, and then I'm going to wait a 1/10 of a second. Well, let's see what happens now when we click that. See how it changes through a bunch of different costumes. Take some time rolling. I think it looks a little bit better. You don't have to do that, but I like it. So very easy way to make it look like it's rolling. Now, when I receive broadcast roll dice, if we wanted to keep score, let's say we had a variable called score. I don't like this variable, so I'm going to delete it. I don't want a list, I want a variable. We're going to call it score. We're going to make it for all sprites because we've got multiple sprites that are going to be affected by this. Let's just start by setting score to, well, maybe we ought to do that when a green flag is clicked. When a green flag is clicked, set the score to 0. But when this sprite is clicked, we want to change the score by the costume number, by the value of the dice. How could we figure that out? There's a handy thing in sensing, and it's not obvious. Right now, it says backdrop number of stage. That is not what we want to do. We want to ask for a costume number, but that's not even a choice yet until we choose dice on the right side. So with dice, we can ask its X and Y position, its direction, its costume number. That's what we want. It also has costume name, size, and volume, those kind of things. Today, we want to know what the costume number of dice 1 is. If I click on this right now, it says 4, which is exactly what it is. If I were to roll the dice and then clicked on that, now it says 6. So this little blue bubble returns the costume number. If I were to change my score by that costume number, then my score would keep adding every time the dice was split. So score is 0. I click the button. Score is now, score is 6. But we rolled a 3. What happened? And here's where we need the broadcast roll dice and wait command. What happened is it broadcast the roll dice, which sent a message. It then changed the score, and then sometime later the dice actually rolled. We need to be using broadcast roll dice and wait in order to have this work like we expect it to do. So let's green flag, set the score to 0. Click the button. We're 3 right now, but we don't know what we're going to be. We changed to a 2. We rolled the dice and waited. Then we changed score by the costume number of the dice. Very important to use that roll dice and wait. If your button is going to be your scorekeeper, it has to know when we're done rolling. Again, notice how long this stays haloed while it's waiting for the dice to settle down. Okay. What if we had 2 dice? Would that be hard? There's a really easy way to make a second dice. I'm just going to duplicate it. Right-click, duplicate it. I come over here. Hey, I have 2 dice. When I click, they both roll. What if I wanted to change the score by both of those added together? Well, I'd have to, a couple of ways to do that. One way, oops, where are we? Back on the button, is to copy this line right here and now choose dice 2. Whoops, it jumped to X position. I want costume number. So now we're going to roll both dice with the broadcast command. When they're both done, we will add the values of the costumes. Let's start it back at 0. I roll the dice. 3 plus 4 is indeed 7. So it's working. I roll them again. I add another 7. It's now 14. So here's the way to tell what the costume number is from, or the dice value is from another sprite. Use it in some to change the score. And of course, green flag sets it to 0. I think we've got about half of our points already if you can go that far. So let's look back at the rubric and double check. The die has 6 or more costumes. It changes costume based on a random number. It uses broadcast message and wait to know when the die is finished rolling so we can calculate a score. The last thing that we haven't used here yet is conditional operators and or not to calculate a score or produce an action based on the value. Do this really quickly. Jump back to our tutorial. How would we know if we got a special value, something like doubles? Is there an if statement I can use to check for doubles? Well, I know we could ask if their first one is 1 and the second one is 1. Or I could do something very simple and ask if they were equal. So I'm going to get an if question. I'm going to pull in the equals operator. I'm going to just copy these little bubbles right here. If costume number of dice 1 equals costume number of dice 2, well, that is doubles. And I could say, if I can get the cursor to select here, you rolled doubles. Now let's click it. We didn't get doubles. We didn't get doubles. We got doubles, and it detected it. In your game, you're going to have to do something more than just say we rolled doubles. The game has to be affected by some if then else logic. It could be doubles. It could be something else. And then for different kinds of games, we'll have a couple of different videos that you'll want to watch for. But this is it for this one. Good luck and enjoy coding.